And welcome back. I'd like to call the Committee of the Whole meeting for April 20th, 2026 to order. Village Clerk Benton, please call the roll.
All right. Mayor Mullen.
Here.
Trustee Duffy.
Here.
Trustee Grau.
Here.
Trustee McGovern. Here. Trustee McQuillan.
Here.
Trustee Olson.
Here.
Excellent, thank you very much. This will bring us into public comment for Committee of the Whole. As a reminder, code provides for up to 5 minutes per person for public comment. If anyone has public comment, please come up to the podium.
Hi everyone, Vanessa Berry. I wanted to start off by thanking the mayor and the village board for listening to residents of Lisle about their concerns about the data centers. In the last couple of months, I've talked with organizers all over the state, and I've been surprised by how many horror stories they've had. There are boards refusing to meet with residents, blowing off their concerns, and pushing through data center developments despite vocal opposition from the residents. Leaders flat out saying that they don't care what their constituents want and moving forward and pushing through the data centers anyway. So it's so nice to have leadership in Lisle that listens, is open to feedback, and will work with residents to address their concerns. And I want to voice my support for the village staff's recommendation to amend the zoning code and eliminate data centers as a permitted use. In the future, if state laws or technology change, we can talk about updating those codes, but right now, I don't think we have the data to allow them in Lisle. And then if anyone is interested, on April 29th at 7 p.m., Representative De La Rosa, along with Sierra Club and Citizens Utility Board, is going to be holding like a open house about data centers at the Lisle Library. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else for public comment? Seeing none, we'll move forward into our regular agenda for the Committee of the Whole, which is Data Center Regulations of Title V of the Lisle Village Code. Director Smetana, would you please present this item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The zoning ordinance establishes data centers as a permitted use in the village's I-1 industrial zoning district. This current regulation took effect January 1st, 2022, and was part of the village's comprehensive zoning ordinance amendment project. Data centers were not specifically referenced in the zoning ordinance in effect prior to January 1st, 2022. That 2022 inclusion of specific data center language was intended to address potential ambiguity in emerging technology and land use trends, while acknowledging that an existing data center has operated in the village's industrial zoning district for decades. There are limited industrially zoned properties in the village of Lisle. Those properties include 711 Ogden Avenue, which is commonly referred to as the Lockformer property, the Western and Indiana Avenue Industrial Parks, and the College West Industrial Park. Based on the community feedback received regarding the formerly proposed data center at 711 Ogden Avenue, staff recommends that Title V be amended to eliminate data centers as a permitted use. Should the state of Illinois adopt legislation regarding data center siting in the future, the village board would retain the right to amend the code for consistency with state law. Within the staff report this evening, staff did take a look at some of the neighboring communities and how those communities regulate data centers. That summary is provided in the agenda packet. Staff recognizes that both Aurora and the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus is exploring data center regulations. Staff's perspective is the community feedback was resounding in January when we attempted to hold a public hearing regarding the proposed data center. Some other options the board could take is a moratorium. That moratorium would have to be temporary in nature. Typically, moratoriums are used to allow the village time to review and come up with additional regulations for use. Another option would be to revise the code and require a special use permit for data centers. That special use permit would ensure a public process, but I think it falls short of acknowledging the feedback we've already received from the community. The last option would be to adopt supplemental regulations. Those regulations could establish setback requirements, area limitations, power or water usage limitations, and other similar design constraints. Again, this evening, staff is requesting Village Board authorization to prepare an amendment to Title V of the Lisle Village Code, removing data centers as a permitted use in the I-1 zoning district.
Thank you very much. Is there any further public comment on this topic? All right, board discussion. Does anyone want to start off?
Trustee
Rock,
Grau
paper,
hit her
scissors?
button first.
Yeah, I did. I don't have a lot. I agree with staff's recommendation. I think they should be a prohibited use. That's it.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think as you outlined there, Director Santana, in my mind, even if you push aside the term data center here, what you have is a development type that the state, for how slowly some of the state operates usually, is actually kind of moving as fast as I think they can move in providing some regulations, guidance, policies, whatever you want to call it, right? They're active in the topic. I think that's probably the fairest way to put it. And what I don't want us to do is use staff time to put together guidance that would become outdated the moment it may get passed by us. The moratorium, we don't know how long the state may take. So, and I think I want to be fair to any developer that comes in too. Like, I don't know what we would be approving and how to approve it without having, like, I don't want the state to come and be like, we just approved something and now you're not supposed to put it right there, or vice versa, right? So the proposal from the staff to me seems the clearest, cleanest way. And then I think when any future board, whether it's this board, next iteration, or whoever, when they vote and talk about putting it back in, they do so in a much more educated manner on the topic with clear guidance from the state and probably even more research from other towns, maybe what they've done as well. So we're not having to reinvent the wheel and it's just easy to go. So I'm comfortable with what has been proposed.
Thank you. Other trustees?
Yeah, so I'll try and be brief. So I certainly understand the feedback, understand Trustee Duffy's point. What I'll, I guess, point out is an outright prohibition, which would be in line with Downers Grove, but not some of the other surrounding communities. I think it sets a message that it's not a use type that's wanted at all, and that's fine. I don't think that there necessarily will be the opportunities that to review, as Trustee Duffy, had referenced, to align the code in the future, because I'll suggest that I think most of the developers will look to other towns, and that may ultimately be what the decision for the board is. I just want to point out there's an impact on municipal finance. The more uses that we say that we don't want limits the options for whatever sites, whether, some might not be, as, Naperville has given guidance that, their office corridor is an area that may be of interest, although they had a data center site that was proposed. It was close to very new residential and ultimately was voted down. I guess all I'm suggesting is that from, I think, the development community's perspective, if you start with the initial guidance, which is it's prohibited, they're likely not to move on and look at other opportunities. That's fine. I just also want to remind that the more that you limit uses that you're open to, the sites that do need to be developed has a shallower and shallower pool of opportunity. So I'm not necessarily in opposition on the industrial sites because there really aren't that many in town. I'm just suggesting that this will now signal we're not interested in any locations, whether they abut residential or not. I'm not necessarily sure I'm in agreement with that approach. There are fewer and fewer property development types that are the future of commerce in the United States. And to rule out this use on effectively all sites, I think is a limitation that a future board may have to address, and we may come to regret in the interim, but not recognize it necessarily because you don't know what isn't shown to you, is I guess what I would suggest. So not necessarily opposed, understand the feedback for this specific zoning, specifically for one location. I just want to remind everyone that I think it has a larger impact by saying it's a prohibited use effectively for office deconversion, if you will, as well. That's it. Thank you.
Can I just say one
Sure.
more thing? Just in response to that, I'm sorry I have a cold, that's why I sound the way I do. There really aren't a lot of places in the village that don't abut to a residential. The industrial park it is by Beaubien, so if we put something there, it would affect those residents. We've heard loud and clear, I think, with the other proposed development, that the residents of Lisle do not want data centers. And so that's where I'm coming from. We're elected to represent them. I think that it's fine for it to be prohibited, and data centers can go look elsewhere as far as I'm concerned. But that's why I take the stand I do. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just tack on to that it's not just the residents or the proximity to residents that's an issue with data centers. There's also the energy use, the water usage, and how those could affect the community. So I think that prohibiting data centers is probably the right thing to do right now. And yes, we are, able to change that decision, down the line once more information comes in about all the different aspects of data centers that are, in question: energy use, water use, environmental impact, and issues with close to residences.
Thank you. Trustee McGovern, you want to add anything?
I'm in agreement with the board's comments, and I think that the special use permit's the way to go.
Can I add?
Special use or or taking it off?
Sorry. I think the special use or the,
Staff's recommendation is to take it out of being a use that's listed.
okay, the prohibited.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Not the moratorium, but
Yeah.
the next step. Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Can I add, though, since it's my birthday, am I allowed to debate you? Yeah? Okay. I think, my part to this is that there's some nuance here. I'm actually, and I'll say this, and I've said this publicly when I ran, so I can't avoid it. I am for data centers. I think there are spots on the office quarter that don't buttress against any residential along 88 that could potentially be that. So there are, and we know the office quarter has some struggles in a macro sense. I'm not familiar with each property there and how that would work. And I think there are so many nuances to the topic as well. You have closed water loop systems, so water actually isn't a concern. But energy can be, but we know, for example, the governor, I think, just came out with working with some other governors where they want data centers to pay their own electrical bills and not have it socialized across. There's things like that where as the regulations become clearer and I'm just going to put more responsibility on the data centers to build in a more conscientious, sustainable manner, that then to me, I could see where maybe the community at large would be more open to it. I understand their point of view on what was related to this project that we had on Lockformer. So I don't want to say it's a never thing, and I also don't want to say it's going to happen. I actually just don't think we have enough information to make an educated policy decision that is going to put both the developer, if they came in, how would we actually judge it and evaluate it? And how would staff, what would you be able to do in that situation when you know of all these potential guidelines coming down? And then on top of it, for the community, it leads to a lot of confusion. And what are we actually approving? So that's where it's okay to take a step back. But I also agree with you, Trustee Olson, the board then has to be, once those guidelines come back, once those legislations passed, we need to go back and have that conversation again with the community about adding it back in with whatever guidelines that we want to do. I'm not a never person on data centers. It's not going away. It's the new utility. Unless we're all going to start driving non-electric cars and all this stuff and not using smartphones, data centers are going to be around and they're not going to go away. So I think it's okay to take a step back with the knowledge that we'll move forward at some point when it's appropriate. That's all. Is that okay with a little push? I didn't want to make you cry.
No need for debate. I just wanted to point out that there are additional factors and consequences that ultimately you can still make the same decision, but there are multiple factors that come in. And I guess to the electricity, Trustee Duffy, you somewhat covered it. There likely is going to be some level of regulation on where and how that's paid for, most likely borne by those that are asking for additional capacity. But what I'll add is if that doesn't happen, to assume that it's not done not only just here or in neighboring communities in DuPage County or even in Illinois, our power grid runs from here to Virginia. So somewhere along the line there, most likely data centers are going to be built and we have no say or impact. And unfortunately, we'll probably bear some of the cost. So I understand the concerns and it is a complicated issue. Just want to point out the alternative side or the what's given up. That's all. And you're right, it's not a forever necessarily, but we're making, a decision today that may have to either be reconsidered or reevaluated, and there are implications today as well as into the future. Thank you.
So I'm in a similar place as Trustee Duffy, that I walked into this 5 years ago now, thinking that data centers were going to be a viable option in Lisle, having seen success in some of the northwestern suburbs where there's a lot, in Elk Grove, Itasca area, and they continue to talk about what successes they feel like they've had in those areas. One of the things that's very different from Lisle to Elk Grove is that Elk Grove has a very specific, large industrial park that is nowhere near anyone's house. So it's a very different setting, and that's one of the things I think that was something I've picked up and learned as we've gone through this. I do agree that the discussions at the state level, whatever comes out of that, is really important for us to have. I think that's a big thing that we discussed when we had the Lock Former site proposal, because we didn't want to do something that would be in opposition to what eventually comes out from the state. We didn't want to do anything that would make things more difficult in the long term because we didn't have adequate information. And there was a lot of things that were brought up during the many conversations that I know we all had individually. It couldn't be in Lisle and not talk about data centers for, when that first started. And I think there's some concerns that were brought up that no one's really touched a lot yet either. And a lot of that comes down to the sound mitigation, the sound at low frequencies that you can't necessarily hear also. And that was another big learning for me. So I'm in agreement with Trustee Duffy that I'm not against data centers, but right now I agree that it's not something that we should be looking to attract at the moment until we know more and until we feel like we could do it in a way that would be safe for all residents as well. So I think it sounds like we generally have consensus with a little bit of disagreement, a warning, shall we say. Director Smetana, is there anything further you need from us?
I think it's just important to note that just because this board takes an action to remove data centers as a permitted use in the zoning ordinance, any developer has the right to file a text amendment in an effort to revise our code for a specific development proposal. And lastly, I think that state legislation takes a while, but if you look at the history of the state, whether it was cell towers or small cells or solar farms, the state has generally caught up to those new emerging technologies and adopted some standards that protect the industry and allows it to grow, but tells municipalities and counties how they need to handle it.
I can't read if you're saying that as a good thing or a bad thing. The most neutral statement from Director Smetana that you'll ever see. But I think you have direction from the board. Is there anything else that you need from us that cover it well for you?
No, staff will prepare the text amendment. We'll have to go through a public hearing process with the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay, cool. That'll be the next step.
That'll be the next step.
Excellent. With that, any further reports from trustees for the evening? Anything further from staff?
Nothing further.
We have executive session on the agenda, but we do not have a need for it tonight. So I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Village Clerk Benton, please call the roll.
Trustee Olson?
Aye.
Trustee McGovern?
Aye.
Trustee Duffy,
Aye.
Trustee Grau,
Aye.
and Trustee McQuillan.
Aye.
Thank you all. We're adjourned for the evening.